All right, welcome to Gun Stuff. So today we're going to be shooting Liberty Ammunition. This is their ultralight line and their defense line. These are 50 grain 9mm projectiles traveling at 2,000 feet per second. Now there's already a ton of footage on these things shooting gel blocks and different stuff like that, but what we're interested in today is we want to see just what kind of performance we can get out of these things at long range so that you can use a PDW like this or this Kel-Tec that we have here that feed off the same magazines as your handgun, things like that, just to see how far you can put effective fire on targets either for competition or self-defense for your truck gun. So here we go. We're going to go 150 yards. So we're going to go ahead and put a couple of blue pasties on here so we have a little something to aim at. This big brown target here is really, it doesn't give you a really fine aiming point, it's just a big giant target. So we're going to go ahead and throw a couple on here. I'll go down and throw a couple on some of the targets down range, and then we'll go back and we'll start going for the different yardages. Let's get this thing zeroed in. All right, so we're at the 50. We're going to start off with the MPX. Going hot. All right, so I set some water bottles and some cantaloupes out there, and then took three rapid shots. Not necessarily like speed or anything, but just wanted to just put a bullet right in the center of those things, just so that way we get a nice good explosion out of it. I'm going to go ahead and send a couple more rounds on the steel. Headshots. All right. Gonna go ahead and transfer over to our Kel-Tec. Send a couple at 50. All right, so shooting these pistol caliber carbines at 50 yards, of course, is no stretch at all. Going offhand on the move or something like that, it starts to get a little more difficult, but I'm on a sandbag and we're shooting some premium ammo here. So this is just the fun stuff up front, just to basically get us on target and get us in the ballpark for where we want to be once we get out to 150. So we're going to go ahead and keep on going. All right, so now we've got, we shot the 50, we shot a couple things at the 50, now we're gonna go ahead and stretch out to 100. Again, we're not really concerned about trying to get on target. We just want to be in the general area, because what I really wanna do is try and get as close to on target as possible and get a nice tight grouping at 150. So this is just the midway point between just getting us to the point where we wanna go. So we're gonna go ahead and send a couple four round groups through each of the guns down at 100 yards. I'm gonna go top blue pasty at 100 yards.
Yeah, probably an inch 7.
Man.
Probably, yes. Just a good 7 inches maybe, 7 o'clock. Centered that, a little lower. There we go, we're back in that 7 o'clock. 2. There we go.
Okay, that's 5. We'll change over. Okay. Let's see if I can focus this in just a little bit. This thing's so blurry. All right. Bottom pasty.
Yep. 12, probably an inch above. 11, probably 3 inches. in the face. 7 o'clock, an inch. Oh, 7 o'clock, probably 4 or 5 inches.
Huh?
9. Yeah, that was.
All right, so here we are at 100 yards. Went ahead and took a couple shots. Top is our MPX, nice group with the MPX. We're looking at about, at 100 yards, we're looking at about 4 inches, 4-inch spread on here. Of course, that's no minute of angle or anything like that, but what we're looking at on here is just how far this can go out. On the Kel-Tec, I'd say the furthest spread is about 5 3/4. Yeah, so we're about 5 3/4 on the biggest spread on that one. Of course, these are. I'm not necessarily worried about this print being around the pasty itself. I just want to know and make sure that I'm in the general vicinity as I keep going out. If I take a lot of time shooting and trying to get on these pasties and hold nice tight groups at the 100, then we're wasting rounds. And we have a limited number of rounds that they send us, so we're trying to get to our final destination of 150 and get on target as best we can down there. So we're moving on. So here we go. We're gonna go 150 yards.
What are we shooting at?
Let's go center.
Circle?
No, center cardboard. Right,
Oh, I'm at the wrong.
3 o'clock.
I'm at the wrong. I'm at the further one. I gotcha. Low left, 7. Yep. 2, probably an inch.
All right.
Same area. Same. Oh, that was higher. Oh, you're on the other side. So 3 o'clock, 1 inch.
That's touching the top of the pasty,
Yep,
wasn't it?
Yep.
All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and shoot one of the, which one do you want me to shoot? One of the, I'll shoot the bottle or the melon.
I can see both, so whatever you want.
Which one do you want first?
Bottles. Well,
Hey, let's do the melon,
do the
because this,
melon,
I think this gun's more accurate, so
Yeah.
we'll do the melon.
Yep, nailed it.
We went right through the lower.
Low left, yeah. Oh, right at the top, you grazed it. Top right.
All right.
On the bottom.
Yep.
Oh, that was hard to tell.
All right. So we just shot the 150 yard with the MPX, and we'll give a little bit more in-depth information on that here in a second. We shot the 150 yard with the MPX. We've shot cantaloupe, we shot a 2-liter bottle, and then we tried to print as best group as I can with this rifle, and then we're going to move on to the Kel-Tec. All right, so now we got our Kel-Tec out. Same ammunition. We're going to go 150 yards, and we're going to shoot try and print a nice tight group at 150 yards with this as well. Okay, going
All right.
bottom pasty 150.
Bottom pasty, all right. Low left, 7 o'clock. Well, half an inch. Say 9 o'clock, half an inch. Oh, that's 10 o'clock, probably an inch and a half. Oh, we're going to do this at 3 o'clock, 3 inches. 6 o'clock, an inch. On it, 3 o'clock.
All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and ring some steel with it, so that way we got the ting 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 with the footage for like. All right, let's see. All right. The circle steel.
Okay. High. Hit. 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 Not sure.
So I'm gonna do the same thing with the MPX. All right, so now we're just gonna go back and forth and ring some steel with at 150 with the MPX.
Oh, I heard that. Heard that.
Going big steel, heart.
Left. Yep. Left again, probably 4 o'clock now. 3 o'clock.
All right, going to swinger. All right, so we found the melon down the hill here a little ways. It hit and it rolled down the hill. So hit it twice, but just as we thought on some of these rounds are still traveling so fast that they're just cutting right through this thing, even though it's a 9mm and it's designed to, deliver its shock real quick and everything. But it passed through this melon so quick, but everything on the inside, of course, is pureed. So I hit it once low, and the bullet doesn't have enough mass to throw it, off the target stand. So then the second time I hit it at 150 right here, and it blew the top out and then it rolled off. But like I said, everything inside of here, I'm just gonna step on it instead of getting it all over my gloves and stuff. You can see inside of there a little bit how that's all just mushed up through there. But shot it twice, and would have eliminated the threat twice. So, and of course our obligatory pop shot. Hit this one right at the top, so it didn't. If I'd have hit it right in the center, it probably would have been a little more spectacular. But still, the windage was on, but elevation, I was a little high on the elevation. All right, so here's our target at 150 yards. The top shot, the top grouping is our MPX with the 1000 Pro on it, with the Leatherwood 1000 Pro Hilux. And then the bottom is our Keltec, and it has just an $80 scope on it. But we'll go with some shot group measurements here. We're about 7 inches at its widest. And of course, taking into consideration, these are both, this was a 10 power scope, so I could see this one much better. The Hilux M1000 is a much better scope. I could see this much more clearly. But again, I fired more rounds on this target. I think this one here was this is just a fluke or me pulling or something like that, because overall the group was just hovering right around here. Across the center here is about 5.5 inches, maybe 5 1/4 if you're going center to center, all the way up to almost 6 3/4 across there. So this is the group we're able to hold. Of course, my hand still covers the whole thing, the whole group at 150 yards with this ammunition. This stuff I'm guessing is probably still going at least 2,000 feet per second, even at this range, out of a longer barrel. On the Keltec, our widest group is about 6 inches in any direction. So this held up actually really well on this. Not exactly sure why, because this is the lower quality optic on here. When I get down there, all I can really see on this one when I'm looking through the optic, it's a 1x4, and so all I can see is just a faint blue dot, and just the, I'm just trying to put the crosshair just basically where it's at, covers up the whole thing. So, but we had a pretty decent grouping on here, and then of course on the still here on the swinger, it was pretty much ringing this thing just about every time I hit it. Had quite a few heart shots in here. Probably it looks like about 5 or 6 heart shots in there, and then all the rest were just peppered around a little bit low. And then we've got our big still up here. Well, this is a bunch of different shots we took. Got a couple heart shots, and then all the rest kind of tapered around here. Some of these are from when we were just getting it zeroed and getting it on target at 150. So we started at 50 yards, getting them on target. We walked it out to 100 yards, and then we brought it out to 150. We weren't really worried about anything at the 50 yard. We took a couple shots at with some other stuff at 50 yards with melons and stuff like that you guys can, just so you guys could see the ballistics and just about what it looks like at 50 yards. But today we're focusing on 150, and that's about as far as we can go here at this range. So we're just trying to stretch out and see just what we can get out of it. All right. So today we got a chance to bring out some Liberty ammunition. It's a civil defense line and their ultralight line. A little while back, I was looking for a way to try and consolidate my gear and trying to think of a way to travel lighter and still have all my capability being able to reach out and ring targets at longer ranges, especially in light of all these running guns and stuff that we're normally doing. So what I was trying to do is I was trying to find something that is configured on the same platform as the guns that I usually carry. So going with PCCs that have a Glock magazine format. So I use a Hellfire, Faxon Hellfire for competition. That's a P80 frame, and it uses Glock magazines. So I was looking for something that maybe I could carry like 20, 30 round magazines and be able to run your pistol and your rifle. But the big thing is, once I started looking into that, I was trying to find out, okay, how do I reach out there? So they got a lot of different PCCs out nowadays, and chambered in all the different, whatever flavor you want and whatever magazine pattern you want. But what I'm looking to do is trying to consolidate everything. So one, I'm carrying less gear, and two, they're kind of cross compatible. But just how far can I reach out? So in doing that, I bought this, I shot some regular ammunition through it, but then when I started looking into the ammunition, seeing that at the speeds it was traveling at, I didn't think I would be able to go out much further than I was already. So what I did is I got online, did a bunch of research, and came across Liberty Ammunition. And what Liberty Ammunition does is they have a 50 grain projectile, which normally you're shooting 115 grain minimum with a 9mm. So this is a 50 grain projectile, and it's traveling at about 2,000 feet per second. So what caught my eye on this was the fact that it was traveling at 2,000 feet per second. So being able to take this round and get it up to almost rifle speeds, feet per second, would be able to give me a little bit more range, and hopefully I would be able to maintain some form of accuracy with it. So just a little bit on the ammunition itself. The cartridge weights on the ultralights total are 93 grains. So that's a lot less than all your other typical 115 grain, 124 grain, 148, all these other 9mm that you can get. Again, like I said, the velocity is about 2,000 feet per second, but going out of these PCCs that we're shooting today, we're expecting these to be around 2,300 feet per second. Now, we didn't have a chronograph, but there is chronograph data on Liberty's website, so you can go there and refer to some of that. We just didn't have access to one today, and we didn't have time to set it all up. So one of the things that I was referencing was some of their information. When this 50 grain projectile hits, it's delivering 450 foot-pounds of energy. So it's delivering quite a bit of energy, but it's still traveling at a very high velocity. So as you'll be able to see earlier on in our video when we were shooting melons and stuff like that, they're kind of passing through relatively quickly. They're claiming accuracy of 1 inch at 25 meters, and that is exactly what I've seen here today. And we actually were able to get more accuracy out of it than 1 inch at 25 meters. So one of the cool things about that they have here is they have a two-piece cartridge. So this two-piece cartridge, the base is made by Shell Shock Technologies, and it's a two-piece cartridge, and with the base being a nickel-plated aluminum, and then the cylinder is a stainless nickel alloy. So we're able to cut down a lot on the case itself, in conjunction with going with a 50 grain projectile. On this 50 grain projectile, you can see that in the center here, this is basically hollowed out. So this is a very huge hollow point, and that's where they lose a lot of it. That's where they're able to shed a lot of the weight on this. So these things are put on a lathe. Each one of these are turned on a lathe and cut and spun down. So you're getting this centrifugal. They're going to be centered, so they're not going to be off balance or anything as they're rotating. But these are all spun on a lathe, each individual one of these. So moving on to what we found today. So we're shooting a lot of the civil defense. So the civil defense is their standard weight. So it still shoots a 50 grain projectile, but it uses a traditional cartridge, one piece casing. So this is a little bit heavier. It's not as light as the ultralight, but it still shoots a 50 grain projectile with the same powder charge. It just shoots a standard case. So they have the same ballistics. So the ultralights are a little bit more expensive, and we don't have as many of those. So what we did is we got zeroed in using these because they were ballistically similar, got on target at each of the yard lines, and then we fired our shots with the ultralights. So we basically got zeroed in with these, and then we finished off with the ultralights, because that's what I'm really interested in, is one, the speed, being able to reach out. But now that I've had a chance to actually handle these rounds, one of the things that we'd like to show you guys is that the difference in the weights. So I have one magazine here that's loaded with standard 150 grain Fiocchi. And then I have another magazine. These are the magazines that I use in competition and shooting. This one is filled with ultralights. So there's 20 rounds in each of these magazines. So we'll go ahead and start off and we'll weigh these. All right, let me get this scale back here. Every time I touch this thing, it gets a little finicky. So I'm gonna go back just a little bit, get it back to 0. All right, close enough. All right, so I'm gonna start off with the first one. So put it down. All right, so we're just under a pound. We're right at 15 ounces for this one magazine. So just about a pound, right? So not too many people can tell an ounce by the feel of something, but we're right at a pound, okay? So I'm gonna bring this back up here, this back up to 0 again. All right, so now we're just under 8 ounces, okay? So half a pound. So just to show you guys the differences. So in these competitions, we're running at, some of these have high round counts. If you're running at half the weight per magazine, by the time you add up all these different magazines, there's been some of these where I'm running with 8, 9, 10 magazines, depending on the round count. So by the time you add this up, the difference between a pound and a half a pound, that adds up over the course. And we're getting ready to do a competition this weekend, and it's a 10K. So by the time you run a 10K carrying all this weight, a lot of times the bullets outweigh the gun when you're carrying this much ammunition. So that's one of the key things that I wanted to point out to you guys. So to give you guys a little bit of insight onto what we shot today. Today we ran. This is my Kel-Tec Sub 2000, and I bought this. This is basically my truck gun. This folds up and goes into a lockbox in the back of my Jeep. And I threw this cantilever mount on here and turned it backwards just so I could push this scope further back so I could get a little bit better picture. And the reason I put a scope on here is because I have astigmatism, and if I use a red dot, I get a bit of a blur on it, so I can't get really fine aiming points. This is just a center point $90 scope that I've had for years, and it was just laying around in a box. So I took this, put this on here, reversed the cantilever, just so that way we could have some fine aiming points. So we wanted to use this because this is just, I would consider this an entry-level PCC. And then we also wanted to give you guys a higher quality option as well, because PCCs are more mainstream now. Everybody's making them. And so you're able to get a much better quality rifle. So we also brought out the SIG MPX. And both of these, of course, are chambered in 9mm, and we put a Hilux M1000 Pro on top of it here. This is a 1x10. You've probably seen this in some of our other videos for testing and shooting, stuff like that. But I put this on here just because I wanted something, some kind of quality glass on top, shooting through a quality rifle. And this thing performed great. So we're gonna go ahead and tell you guys what we got here. So we started off at 50 yards, and we just got baseline at 50. We shot a couple targets, we shot a couple melons, we shot some soda bottles and stuff like that, just to see how the ballistics and what kind of shock we were going to have at 50 yards and 150 yards with these rounds. So we got on at 50, then we went out to 100, and then we went out to 150 with both of these rifles. We shot groups at each one. So what we got here was on the top here is my MPX grouping at 150. So the 50 yard and really the 100, I'm really not concerned about it. Any quality PCC is going to be able to give you a decent performance at 50 and say 100. So what I was looking at is going out to 150. I would have liked to have gone a lot further than that, but we're limited where we're at today to 150 yards. So we stretched it out as far as we could. And at 150 yards, this was my biggest group, and this opened up this group to a 6 3/4 group here. So with the MPX, I got a 6 3/4, but I think this is me. I think this is totally marksmanship error on my part. This one high round, I don't really attribute that to the ammunition, but still, nonetheless, it's in the group, so we have to measure it. But overall, the whole thing is, just about the size of my hand. So at 150 yards, these are all still A-zone hits. And then on the bottom, at 150 yards, is the Kel-Tec group, and the Kel-Tec group printed in even at its widest spread on both. So the widest spread here and widest spread here, both were the same at 5.5 inches. And of course, all these are covered by the hand. So what we're really looking to do is to find out, okay, well, even if you have it's these PCCs, these collapsibles, you got all these different models out. If you have these, just how far can you stretch them out with the right ammunition? Now, some of the stuff that we ran into with the ammunition was we did run into just a few feeding issues because of the fact that this has such a huge hollow point. I'll zoom in here. You can see that we had a couple where it came up and it hit on the feed ramp, and it just kind of lodged in there. Once it did, you can see that it put a pretty nice nick on the inside of that cartridge. So we had 5 of these total out of all the rounds we fired today, and we fired quite a few. But we did have 5 failure to feeds where they came up and hit on the feed ramp. So not necessarily sure, like for a competition or anything like that, I wouldn't think that would be a huge detriment. It'd be something that I would like to pay more attention to in the future. But still, the fact that you're able to reach out with this ammunition and still print these groups at these yardages. So we hope you like it, and we'll see you next time on Gun Stuff.